For a record 6 years now, Squarespace has been helping me turn my dream into reality, and that's what Squarespace does for millions of other people too. Their industry-leading website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
The moment I booted up Romeo is a Dead Man, I knew I was in for quite the eye-opener. The first thing you need to know about this game is that it's from Grasshopper Manufacture, the studio helmed by Japanese developer Goichi Suda, more commonly known by the moniker Suda51. Now I'll admit, I'm not overly familiar with his work. This is actually the first game of his that I've properly played through, but as far as I understand, they're kind of weird, boisterous action games that seem to be entirely built around anything and everything that Suda had lodged in his mind at the time. No More Heroes, for example, was a satire on power fantasies and violence in popular media at the time, while Lollipop Chainsaw released in 2012, at the height of the whole zombie craze with a sly take on objectification. While Romeo is a Dead Man isn't the brainchild of Suda alone, instead co-written and directed alongside one Ren Yamazaki, who he's collaborated with on some past projects, certainly Suda's fingerprints are all over this thing, given its similarities to both No More Heroes and Lollipop Chainsaw. So what was top of mind this time when developing Romeo is a Dead Man? Well, I think it was a feeling that might be relatable to many of you, the desire to go back in time to the quote-unquote good old days of the pre-2000s. And so, he and his team have looked to compile all those disparate memories that come to mind when you think of that era, to channel that stream of consciousness into a single video game, and that certainly leads to mixed results. While I appreciate some of its unconventional design, and in particular the use of so many different mediums as an ode to all pre-2000s pop culture, spanning film, games, comic book, and anime, and little else left much of an impression. The story is pretty messy. Rather than leaning into its silliness, it attempts to be serious and thought-provoking without the clarity or tonal consistency required to land those beats. More problematic though is that the game just doesn't play very well. Levels are simple and repetitive, and that'd be fine if the combat was great, but it's just not quite there. Frequent animation locks make it feel rather stiff, and that in combination with some insane visual noise unfortunately drags down what is an otherwise solid combat sandbox. I am glad I played this, if only to better understand why Grasshopper Manufacture has such a passionate following, but ultimately, Romeo is a Dead Man feels like a game that'll only really connect with people who are already on this studio's wavelength, and it would seem, at least for now, that I am not yet one of those people.
How many people have you killed so far?
That is one yoked son of a bitch. You're really gonna feel it now.
Romeo is a Dead Man follows the story of Romeo, a small-town deputy sheriff who comes across some alien zombie while on patrol that mauls off his arm and half his face, but just before he passes to the other side, his grandpa appears from a portal and injects him with a serum that turns him into a sort of undead biomechanical superhero known as Dead Man. Fast forward a little later, it turns out his grandpa's meddling with time has blown up the world into scattered pocket dimensions, and Romeo's ex-lover, Juliet, is revealed to be some extra-dimensional being who's now wreaking havoc across various points in space-time. So what does Romeo do? He joins up with the FBI of space-time, yes, that is their actual name, to track her down, along the way bringing justice to a chain of other time-traveling criminals who have had dealings with her. And to be honest, I was down for that. I was down for all this craziness, but unfortunately I didn't enjoy this story as much as I thought I would, for a number of reasons. The first is the dialogue. Now, obviously English isn't this team's first language, so I get why it is the way it is. But yeah, most of the time it feels like you're watching a poorly translated anime. Characters repeat stuff when they don't need to. Their choice of words often sound unnatural. Sometimes the things they say just straight up make no sense at all. And that combined with so many plot points made the story difficult to follow in ways that don't feel intentional. And look, I wouldn't mind a nonsensical story if the story was kind of meant to be silly and not meant to be taken too seriously. But no, Romeo is a Dead Man regularly wants to be taken seriously. Like the first boss you meet does the whole "we're not so different, you and I" thing, referencing Romeo's penchant for violence, and it's framed in a way that you expect some sort of revelation about Romeo's past, or some introspection from him. But no, the game never really resolves that conflict. Similarly, there's this mysterious man reaching out to Romeo through floating CRT TVs, who's constantly spouting tales and thought experiments and platitudes, as if to impart some wisdom, but they have like no relation to each other or what's currently going on. and again, aren't even coherent most of the time, so none of it resonates. Like I said, I think all of this would be fine if the story embraced its camp, similar to something like Shinobi Art of Vengeance, for example, or indeed Grasshopper Manufacturer's previous games, but more often it adopts a rather self-serious tone that clearly does not play to this team's strengths. That's not to say the lighter beats aren't there, but now they feel oddly out of place in a game where they should be the focus. Like, this is an inherently goofy time travel adventure where in one moment I'm talking to a catman aboard my spaceship, but the next I'm sneaking around a mental hospital learning of the brutal mutilation and experimentation of its patients, only for that mission to conclude on a beat that's meant to be cutesy and comedic. The tonal whiplash is just nuts, and without that consistency or meaningful follow-through, much of the narrative just landed completely flat, such that I quickly became pretty disinterested in a story that should otherwise be wildly entertaining. Where these haphazard ideas do work, though, is in the way that Romeo is a Dead Man is paying homage to all facets of pre-2000s pop culture. Films, video games, comics, all of it. It's in the story and visual design, with Romeo's grandpa clearly riffing off Doc from Back to the Future.
Romeo, listen up. You're gonna die in about 15 seconds.
Romeo's Dead Man persona seems very much inspired by Ultraman in both his design and powers. There are elements of Tron in there, a bit of Men in Black. It's got the ultra-violent blood and gore of cult horror films like Evil Dead. Then there's the way that Romeo is a Dead Man jumps between such a variety of mediums and visual styles iconic to that era. Most of the time you're playing from that expected sort of modern third-person 3D perspective, but cutscenes are often done through hand-drawn comic book cells, each seemingly done by completely different artists, in many ways mimicking how you'd follow a single comic book hero's adventures through various different runs. Then aboard the FBI ship, where you'll talk to other members of your crew and manage upgrades, the game shifts to top-down 2D pixel art, and many of the interactions here are done via minigames inspired by retro titles. Examples include scanning for your next mission via Pong, or my favorite, the stat upgrade system where you gain persistent power-ups through this Pac-Man thing, instead of some lame upgrade tree we've seen many times before. Romeo is a Dead Man just wonderfully celebrates all the media that floods to your mind when you think about that pre-2000s era, and in many ways is also celebrating much of Grasshopper Manufacturer's previous works. That's by far the thing I'll remember most about this game, because it's certainly not the story, and unfortunately it's also not the gameplay. So in the spirit of traveling back in time, Romeo is a Dead Man is also somewhat of a throwback when it comes to level design and combat. It has a very simple structure that kind of harks back to that 360 era. You show up to a mostly linear level, you work your way through it via some very simple lock and key puzzle design, all while tearing through everything in your way. You then face the boss and it's on to the next level. Is this loop kind of repetitive, dare I say dated? Yes, but personally I don't mind. I enjoy going back to simpler times every now and then. I enjoyed Atomfall and South of Midnight last year, which had a similar sort of energy. And in fact, I think that old school design kind of fits here, given this game is all about being transported back in time. I think the main problem for me was that you're doing a lot of combat, and the combat just doesn't quite make it over the line. So the hack and slash basics are there. You've got a basic light and heavy attack combo that feel pretty satisfying to use owing to all the blood and guts. The toolkit is also there, with 4 melee weapons to choose from alongside 4 guns, each with their own unique ultimate ability thing that you charge up by spilling blood. Oh, and there's also your bastards. What are bastards, you ask? Well, you probably know what that means, but in the context of this game, they are zombies that you grow from seeds occasionally dropped by enemies, and each are born with an active ability and random stats. What's more is that you can merge 2 together to get the ability of one with the stats of the other. You can slot up to 4 of these guys to briefly summon in battle, where they can act as turrets that can freeze or poison or shield you or run toward enemies before blowing up in their face. It's a super weird way to handle abilities. It's never explained where these zombies came from or why they're friendly, but you know what? I'm into it. Again, it's just that bit more interesting than getting abilities through some standard leveling system. And look, the combat does have a decent rhythm to it too. You're encouraged to dance between melee and range, since most major enemies and bosses have one or multiple crit spots you can shoot to deal big damage or to stun them, and your bastards can be easily killed if you use them at the wrong time and place. But where things kind of fall apart is when you actually start hitting buttons. There are just too many animation locks in this game between finishing a combo or reloading or summoning your bastards or getting staggered from any attack. Hell, just walking in poison staggers you for some reason. And while the blood bursting out in all directions makes combat quite cathartic, when combined with the many other particle effects going on, you just won't be able to see what you or your surrounding enemies are doing most of the time. Further, when this visual noise is happening in tandem with those animation locks, there are moments where it feels like you just have no control over what you can see or do. Unfortunately, these problems also just get worse over the course of the game as more enemies get thrown at you and more abilities get unlocked. So yeah, while the pieces are there for fun, chaotic combat, all these issues add up to make it needlessly cumbersome and kind of amateurish in a way that action games from first-time developers often felt in that 360 era. But Grasshopper Manufacture have been making action games for quite a time now, so I expect a little bit more. Separate to that is the game's technical state. I was playing this on a powerful rig with an RTX 4080 Super, and with the game set to very high settings at 2K resolution, I saw frequent dips below 50 FPS. I also had cutscenes break on occasion, particularly toward the final hours of the game, to the point that the last 2 or 3 cutscenes were just completely busted for me. So with all that in mind, if you're an average punter like me and you're wondering whether you should throw down $50 on Romeo is a Dead Man to get your first taste of this studio's brand of weirdness, I'm gonna say probably not, or at least wait to grab this at a steep discount. While this was certainly a memorable experience with moments where the absurdity and style is used to great effect, what I'll also remember are those regular moments of frustration and confusion. There just isn't enough glue holding all this together and not enough polish in the combat. But look, let's be real, if you're a fan of this studio's previous games, you probably don't care for many of the criticisms I've laid out here. Hearing that this game has an incoherent narrative and clunky, dated gameplay is probably music to your ears. All you want to know is, does this feel like a Suda game, and just how Suda is it? To both those questions, I think you'll find the answer is yes. The absurd narrative, the over-the-top violence, the minigame approach to progression, the many callbacks to 80s and 90s media. As I understand it, one or more of these elements feature in this studio's prior games, but here in Romeo is a Dead Man, all of these things have been thrown into the mix to form this bizarre, retro-inspired fever dream, leaving nothing on the cutting room floor. And that is, I suspect, part of why Suda and his studio have garnered such a cult following. Their games aren't met with much in the way of critical acclaim upon release, but they've got this very, for lack of a better word, unfiltered quality to them. They are unique and imperfect in a way that reflects the equally unique and imperfect human hands behind them. Romeo is a Dead Man seems to continue that legacy for better and for worse, and has gotten me, at least now, a little curious about what other unapologetically weird and ultimately flawed experiences Grasshopper Manufacture might have in store in the future.
Do you run your own business, or do you want to? If so, a website is really helpful, and there's no better or easier way to build a website than Squarespace. Let's say, for example, you have a store that sells stuff, I don't know, clothes, shoes, furniture, cell phones, whatever. That store exists in just one spot, and you're probably only able to service your local area. But what if you could tap into a much bigger market? What if you had a website that lets customers find you no matter where they are? What if they could see your inventory online and make purchases? And what if you had a website that could facilitate all of that seamlessly? Well, that's exactly what Squarespace does. Squarespace lets you build professional-looking websites in minutes. You just select from their extensive list of pre-built templates, customize those templates to your heart's desire, and boom, an incredible-looking website that looks like it costs thousands of dollars to build, when in reality, you did it all yourself. That's just the front end, whereas business owners are going to be equally interested in the back end. Squarespace provides intuitive tools for inventory management, customized shipping options and label printing, simple payment solutions through platforms like PayPal and Stripe, and detailed analytics so you can track how well business is going. There's even award-winning customer support on hand to assist you should you ever get stuck or just need some advice. It's an easy-to-use end-to-end solution that could change your life, to be honest. A website is one of the best ways to get yourself or your business out there, so if you're thinking about kicking off something new, either personally or professionally, a website is certainly going to be a great step in that process. If you want to get started, then visit squarespace.com to start building your website through their free trial, and if you want to get serious, then use offer code SKILLUP at checkout for a 10% discount off your purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks very much to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.